The last guardian of Khemara. The wind carried whispers across the barren wasteland. Dust swirled around the feet of Thorne as he walked through the valley of broken stones. His massive frame cast a long shadow in the dying light of day. The leather straps across his chest creaked with each step. His dark hair moved like a storm cloud around his weathered face. Behind him lay the smoking ruins of his village. The memory still burned in his mind like hot coals. 3 days had passed since the raiders came from the eastern mountains. 3 days since everything he knew turned to ash and blood. Thorne stopped walking. He placed his hand on the pommel of his sword. The metal felt cold against his palm. Around him, the landscape stretched empty and silent. No birds sang. No insects buzzed. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. He had been hunting in the high hills when the attack came. By the time he returned, the work was done. Houses burned. Fields trampled. The people he had sworn to protect lay scattered like fallen leaves. His father. His sister. The woman he planned to marry come spring. All gone. The sun sank lower behind the jagged peaks. Long shadows reached across the valley floor like dark fingers. Thorne knew he should find shelter soon. Night brought dangers in this cursed land. Things that walked on too many legs. Things that howled without voices. But sleep would not come easily. It never did anymore. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces. Heard their screams. Smelled the smoke that rose from burning timber and flesh. A sound made him turn. Footsteps. Slow and careful. Someone was following him. Thorne's hand tightened on his sword hilt. He waited. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped. "I know you're there," he called out. His voice echoed off the stone walls of the valley. "Show yourself." From behind a boulder stepped a figure. Small and bent with age. An old woman wrapped in grey robes. Her face was lined like old leather. But her eyes were bright and sharp as winter stars. "You seek the raiders," she said. It was not a question. Thorne studied her carefully. Travelers were rare in this dead place. Especially old women who walked alone. "What is it to you, grandmother?" She smiled. The expression transformed her weathered features. "I seek 'em too, young warrior. They took something from me as well." What could they want with an old woman? "My granddaughter." The words carried pain deep as mountain roots. "She is the last of my line. The last who carries the old blood." They took her 3 days past. 3 days. The same time his village burned. "You followed 'em alone?" Thorne asked. "I may be old, but I am not helpless." She pulled back her robes. Beneath them hung a curved dagger. Its blade gleamed with strange markings. "I was tracking raiders before your father was born, boy." Thorne felt something shift inside his chest. For 3 days he had walked in solitude, carrying his grief like a stone. Now he was not alone. "What is your name, grandmother?" "I am called Vera. And you are Thorne of the mountain clans. Your reputation travels far." He nodded slowly. "If we travel together, we share the dangers. These are not common bandits. They move with purpose, with knowledge of the old ways." Vera's eyes grew distant. "Yes, they seek the temple of Khemara. In the deep desert, they believe my granddaughter can open the sealed chamber." "What lies in this chamber?" "Power," she whispered, "the kind that should stay buried." The wind picked up around them. It carried the scent of rain from distant clouds. Thorne looked at the old woman. Alone, his chances of finding the raiders were small. The desert was vast, full of hidden places, but Vera knew their destination. "We leave at first light," he decided. They made camp in the shelter of fallen stones. Vera proved skilled at finding water in dry places. She gathered roots that could be eaten, built a fire that gave warmth without showing smoke. As darkness fell, she began to speak. Her voice was soft but clear in the night air. "My granddaughter's name is Lyra. She has 17 summers, hair like golden wheat, eyes the color of summer sky. She laughs like running water over stones." Vera poked the fire with a stick. Sparks rose into the darkness. "She does not know what she carries. The gift that flows in her blood." "What gift?" "The ability to speak with stone. To wake the sleeping guardians that protect sacred places. It is a rare thing, passed down through the women of my family for 1,000 years." Thorne watched her face in the firelight. "The raiders know of this. Their leader does. A man called Brak the Bone Crusher. He serves darker masters, things that should not walk in the world of men." They traveled for 5 days through the wasteland. The landscape grew harsher with each mile. Rocky ground gave way to sand. The sun beat down like a hammer on an anvil. At night the temperature dropped until their breath showed in white puffs. Vera proved to be a steady companion. She knew the ways of desert survival. Which plants held water, how to read the signs in sand and stone. Her old legs never faltered on the difficult paths. On the 6th day, they found the temple. It rose from the desert floor like the bones of some great beast, carved from black stone that seemed to drink the sunlight. Tall pillars surrounded a central courtyard. Beyond that, a pyramid climbed toward the cloudless sky. There, Vera pointed with one gnarled finger. The entrance to the chamber lies beneath the pyramid. But see the guards. Thorne counted them. 20 men, maybe more. They wore the skins of desert animals. Carried weapons of bone and iron. At their center stood a giant of a man. Brak the Bone Crusher. His arms were thick as tree trunks. Scars covered his bare chest like a map of old battles. Too many for a direct attack, Thorne muttered. Perhaps. But look there. Vera pointed again. The girl. Thorne saw her then. Small and golden-haired. Bound with ropes near the pyramid entrance. Even at this distance, he could see she was unharmed. The raiders needed her alive and able. They wait for the moon to rise, Vera explained. The chamber can only be opened when moonlight touches the sacred symbols. We have until midnight. Thorne studied the temple layout. The guards were positioned to watch the obvious approaches. But the old builders had been clever. Drainage channels ran beneath the structure. If they could reach those tunnels. Can you move quietly, grandmother? Vera's smile showed teeth still strong despite her years. I told you, boy. I have been doing this since before you were born. They waited until the sun touched the horizon. Then began their careful approach. The drainage tunnel entrance lay half a mile from the temple. Hidden among tumbled stones and desert scrub. The passage was narrow and dark. Built to carry away the rare desert rains. Thorne had to crawl on hands and knees. Behind him, Vera moved like a shadow. Silent despite her age. After what felt like hours, they reached a grate beneath the temple courtyard. Through the metal bars, Thorne could see the raiders preparing their ritual. Brak stood beside a carved altar. His men formed a circle around the pyramid base. And there, still bound but now placed on the altar itself, was Lyra. Thorne tested the grate. Old metal, weakened by centuries of rare but powerful floods. He braced his back against the tunnel ceiling and pushed with both feet. The metal groaned, bent, finally gave way with a sound like breaking bones. He lifted himself into the courtyard. Helped Vera climb up behind him. They crouched in the shadow of a fallen pillar. The altar lay 50 feet away. Between them and Lyra stood 20 armed men. The moon rises, Brak's voice boomed across the courtyard. Bring the girl to the chamber entrance. 2 raiders lifted Lyra from the altar. She did not struggle, but Thorne could see the fear in her young face. They carried her toward a dark opening in the pyramid wall. This was their moment. Thorne drew his sword. The blade sang as it cleared the scabbard. He stood and roared a battle cry that echoed off the ancient stones. The raiders spun toward the sound. For a heartbeat, they stared in shock at the massive warrior who had appeared among them like a demon from the underworld. Then Brak snarled orders. His men charged. What followed was less a battle than a storm of steel and fury. Thorne moved through the raiders like wind through wheat. His sword rose and fell. Each stroke found its mark. Blood splashed across the sacred stones. But there were too many. For each man who fell, 2 more pressed forward. Bone spears jabbed at his ribs. Iron blades sawed his throat. A spear point opened a line across his shoulder. Another scraped along his thigh. He was slowing, bleeding. Soon they would drag him down through sheer numbers. Then Vera's voice rose above the clash of weapons. Not a battle cry, but something else. Words in a language old when the pyramids were young. The ground began to shake. Dust rained from the temple walls. Cracks appeared in the courtyard stones. The raiders stumbled and looked around in growing fear. From the pyramid came a sound like grinding stone. A deep rumble that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The guardians wake, Vera shouted. Lyra, call to them. Your blood knows the way. The girl raised her head. Understanding dawned in her blue eyes. She opened her mouth and sang. It was not a song in any human tongue. The melody seemed to come from the stones themselves. Ancient and powerful, full of the deep patience of mountains. The pyramid shuddered. Blocks of stone began to shift and move. They flowed like water, reshaping themselves into new forms. The raiders backed away in terror. Even Brak's scarred face showed fear. From the pyramid walls stepped the guardians. Beings of living stone, tall as 2 men, strong as the mountains. Their eyes glowed with inner fire. They moved with purpose toward the intruders who had violated the sacred place. The battle was over in moments. The raiders fled into the desert. Those who moved too slowly were crushed beneath stone fists. Brak himself stood his ground longest. He swung his great war hammer at the nearest guardian. The weapon shattered against stone skin. Then massive hands closed around his body. There was a sound like breaking kindling. Silence fell over the courtyard. Thorne leaned on his sword, breathing hard. Around him, the guardians stood motionless once more. Already their stone bodies were returning to the pyramid walls. Vera ran to her granddaughter. Cut the ropes that bound her. They held each other close, tears streaming down both their faces. Is it over? Lyra asked in a small voice. For now, her grandmother replied. The chamber will remain sealed. The darkness will stay buried. Thorne sheathed his sword. The cuts on his body had stopped bleeding. They would heal. Everything would heal, given time. He looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, his village still lay in ruins. His dead still lay unburied. But he was no longer alone with his grief. Purpose had found him in this ancient place. The Guardians slept once more, but the world still held darkness that needed to be fought. People who needed protection. Come, he said to the two women. Dawn will bring new dangers, but also new hope. Together, the three survivors walked away from the temple. Behind them, the pyramid settled back into silence. The Guardians returned to their eternal watch. The desert wind whispered across the sacred stones. It carried no threats now, only the promise of morning, and the long road ahead.